I would say 60 to 90 days ago, most leaders of organizations would have looked at HR and talent acquisition and said, talent acquisition is more important to me than HR.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, I saw on your profile, on your page at the Tim Sackett project, that you have dad and then you have point guard for your 40 plus league.
Yeah, backup point guard, right?
Backup point guard. Are you guys playing right now, or I'm assuming you guys haven't played in a while?
No,
No.
no, I haven't played in a while. I'm so far back. I haven't, it's probably been a long time since I've even stepped on the court.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I hang with a bunch of guys who we all love basketball. So that was kind of started out that way. When I started the blog 10 years ago, I was still out there, and now it's more basketball trips is kind of our thing.
Got it. Got it. Well, it is not basketball, but I actually put on this shirt in your honor. Can you recognize that picture right there?
That's the Sandlot,
That's
right?
the Sandlot.
Yeah.
All day, every day. So even though it's baseball, I thought you might relate to that. So, anyways, I appreciate very much you joining me today. I've
Yeah.
actually been following you for a while, and I have to admit that the first thing that I connected with is your approach. Your writing is clear. Is some people may say kind of in your face, but it's no nonsense. So I certainly appreciate that, because sometimes you get so caught up in some of how people present themselves and how they're right, and they're trying to be politically correct, and they're trying to put the fancy spin to it. And I found you, and I said, okay, this is a guy that I can follow and that I can listen to. Have you gotten that feedback?
Yeah, no, I think part of it is it's for one, I think for most HR people, most people in a career, right, working for a company, it's hard to have a persona socially where you're going to go out and say your opinion. And like my buddy Chris Dunn and I like to say, like at this point, we've said so much stuff and been out there, no one would ever hire us, right? We're unhireable at this point because of the Google. Um, but
Yeah.
like if you think about those people that you listen to, whether it's a podcast or those things that you read, books, blogs, it's always about having a strong opinion on something,
Yeah.
whether you agree with the person or not. Like it's like have an opinion, just have a take and come at it and let's see what that might be.
So, obviously, I haven't properly introduced you, but you are president of HRU Tech.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about HRU Tech. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so it's contingent. IT engineering, staffing, mostly contract work. Company my mother started actually 40 plus years ago. I've been running the company the last 11 years.
Okay.
So we had that transition. I always tell people I was born into recruiting. So single mom. She was starting her company when I was still little, and we would, literally my sister and I would sit on the bed as she was making recruiting calls at night with no sound on the TV and listen to her make these calls, right? When I was like 9, 10
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah.
And so, I never thought that I would get in the business. I went to school, and then coming out of college, her business was starting to take off, and she offered me a position. And so I accepted and kind of got into recruiting from that standpoint. So yeah, it's been a family affair for a long time.
Yeah. So I started reading your book, The Talent Fix, that you launched last year, right? Was it last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember reading that story, how you got started. So we have in common. I also come from a single mom, definitely not in recruiting. She was she was selling. She had her own clothing store, which she operated from the house. It's interesting because as I think back, my mom was in a way one of the precursors of Amazon, because her business was about delivering the clothes to your home. So she would drive, go to your home, leave you with a couple of options and say, try them on, and whatever you like, keep, and whatever you don't like, just let me know and I'll come back and pick it up. And then you cannot pay me in full, just pay me in monthly payments. So it was interesting. as I was reading your book, and I go, okay, so here's a guy that I connect with not only on the sports front, and by the way, you also have a dog. My dog, I had to
Yeah,
kick
yeah.
him out because otherwise he'll get too busy. But certainly a lot of things in common. But I think the most important thing is that we're all both in the business of HR. Although,
Mhm.
as I read your book, which I haven't finished, but I've read enough to get a feel for what you're trying to convey. And
Yeah,
I definitely will finish it because I think you have a lot of good insight, particularly as I challenge myself as an HR professional with what's coming next. And I want to take this interview, I want to break it into two parts. The first part is a little bit about getting in your inside of your mind from an HR talent acquisition standpoint. And then
hmm
also still getting in your mind, but from a candidate standpoint, because part
yeah,
of my goal is to help what I describe as the unemployed, underemployed, and those looking to make a career change, particularly now in the context of coronavirus.
for
Um,
sure. Right now, yeah,
so let's begin with the talent fix.
yeah.
Why did you write it? And as I describe it, what was the heartburn that you were having that you said, I gotta write this book?
Part of it is a capacity issue. So when I started writing on the internet, like 10, 11 years ago, the audience is very small, and the people that show up are all fans, and they like, you basically right away connect with, someone, you read the blog, like they connected, and they're like, oh, I'm going to keep coming back every day and reading his thoughts, right? And you actually become friendly with a lot of those early readers because it's such a small community at that point. As it grows and gets bigger and bigger, what happens is people start asking questions like, oh, well, what ATS and how would you do this and what kind of this? And it gets to the point where you no longer have the capacity to answer every single question. Or if you do, it becomes a second full-time job. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
for me, writing the book was, let me just put everything that you're going to ask me
Yeah.
into a book.
Yeah.
And if you want it, like here it is. It doesn't stop the questions because people don't really want to read a book all the time. Very few people, um, or they don't want to invest the $25 or whatever it costs for a book. They would rather just say, "Hey, I just need this question answered right now." Um, but that was really, I would go back. That was the heartburn for me was how do I make sure I give a full, like, right answer to everybody who's asking all these questions without spending hours and hours and hours a week actually replying to all of those questions, which was beginning to become very difficult. I don't, in hindsight, it didn't really stop the questions. They still come.
Probably
I will
even
ask,
more.
and I'll ask people, did you get my book? Did you read the book? It's in chapter 7. It
Mm-hmm.
answers it right there. And they'll say, oh yeah, I'll buy that, but just answer my question.
I think I think it's a natural instinct that we all have that, well, just I don't want to read the book, just tell me the answer, give me the answer so that I can start
Yeah.
working on it. um,
Well, it's the HR persona in me as well, right? Is when somebody asks for help or asks, like, you want to be able to provide that. Like you just, so I have a hard time, like, and there's so often like I'll end like an answer to a question with, hey, you can thank me later for the $10,000 worth of consulting I just gave you, because that's basically what you just asked me for was exactly what you would pay somebody to come in and tell you,
that's
so.
right, that's right. So send them a bill later on. um, so there's a lot of good nuggets that I took, as I'm reading the book, because I got the digital version, so I'm reading and I'm making notes. And one of them, obviously, you talk about companies a lot, and we'll talk about
Yeah.
the unicorns in just a moment. But from your perspective, what do companies continue to get wrong about talent acquisitions?
I think the biggest one is almost every company overestimates their own brand. Because here's what happens is you and I both go to a company and work for a company and we're company guys and we love the company. But for the most part, with the millions of companies that are out there, most people have no idea what your company is or what it does. But yet we're working there. So we think, oh, if I just put up a career site and I just put the jobs on there, we're going to find the talent we need. And what I try to tell people is what your career site is you built this really beautiful billboard, but you built it behind your building.
Oh,
So,
good analogy.
right? Because
Yes.
if nobody knows it's there
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and no one knows who you are, it's like putting a billboard behind your building. Like people are going to have to go there to actually find it. And that's what a career site is. And yet, so they don't understand. And so often I'll talk to a TA leader and they'll just say, well, if we just had a better career site. No, no one cares about your career site. Like it's great that once they get there, like,
Yeah.
but first we have to get them there, which means all this other marketing that has to go on that most of us just don't understand. So for me, and it starts with our executives because our executives are the number one people who love their company. And so they just think, oh gosh, everybody wants to come work here. Everybody knows about us because they never run into somebody at that level. If I'm a CEO of a company and I'm in my city, Lansing, Michigan, if I usually I'm going to walk into somebody and I'm going to say, "Oh, I run ABC Manufacturing." They're going to go, "Oh, wow, that's great," and they just assume everybody knows, and no, and very few do actually.
So, do you think there's also a little bit of, you talk in the book about that there's things and you used a phrase which reminded me of A Few Good Men in places that we.
But by the way, that's one of my favorite movies of all
Yeah.
time.
So you know that
I've probably seen that 50 times.
well, I read the book and there's this phrase that they say places that we don't talk about at parties or things we don't talk about parties. I
Yeah,
said A Few Good Men when he's in the stand
exactly.
talking about it. But the reality is that I connected with that because I think on one side they're probably overestimating their brand, but they also don't want you to look behind the scenes, right? They don't really want you to look.
Yeah, there's a little bit of here's what we want to become,
Uh-huh.
and here's what we want you to think we already are, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not
They're
really
not really
there.
there.
And that's the hard part of being transparent, right? About the brand, about who we are, is that here's what I try to tell people is that all of us have bad parts of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our worst days, we never want someone to view us as that's who we are. And companies are no different. And so I always take a look at it and think of the person in your organization that loves their job, that loves the company, that if I ask them to go out on a Tuesday night and get company logo tattooed on our butt, they're going to be the first one going, "Yep, I'm there, Tim. I'm with you. Let's go get that logo tattooed right on our butt." And I said, I want that story from that person because that's a real story for them. They truly love the company. They truly love their job. And what I'm hoping for is when I hire you, you're going to love it just like they are. And
Mm-hmm.
it's real for them. Now, what I don't want is to say, oh, well, here's Tim over here who's a complete cancer, who's underperforming, who hates his job, hates his life, and hates our company. And people go, well, that's real as well. Well, yeah, but that's not who I want to. I don't want to
Of
hire more
course,
Tim.
yeah. I have enough with one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've encountered in my own career as I interact with others in HR that we kind of share some of the challenges that we face, and some of that is the how can we be transparent without actually being transparent?
Yeah.
Because we're not putting all the skeletons out there. I mean, you just can't. And at the same time, how real is it to put that individual that tattoos the logo? Is that truly representative of the common denominator within the organization? I mean, it may not be, but what are you going to put? The guy that's just going to say, it's okay. It's okay to work here. Just imagine all these advertisers saying, why do you have Apple? It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it does what it's supposed
Yeah.
to.
Why do you drink Coke?
Yeah,
It's kind of like Pepsi.
it's good.
You know, you know.
It's like I've seen those videos that say if trailers were honest or honest trailers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't be completely honest.
It's the best version of ourselves. And by the way, it's not just organizations. We do the same thing. Like I'm not going to go on a date with somebody the first time and go, "Hey, by the way, nice to meet you. My name's Tim. I have an uncle in prison." Like
You just don't
it's
put it out there. Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
you're just not going to do it,
Yeah.
right?
So, okay, so companies are overestimating, and certainly they may not want to share, some of that transparency because in reality, nobody then will follow them. So you then start diving into some of the shortcomings, and you talk about, the employers that really are investing time and effort. But this is where I found it fascinating. Now, many HR people may get offended by this, but this is why I decided to have this question.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
start talking about potentially a divorce between HR and talent acquisition.
yeah.
Um, has talent acquisition now leaped HR? Is HR becoming the old personnel department that is just pushing paperwork and staying out of legal trouble?
I would say 60 to 90 days ago, I would say most leaders of organizations would have looked at those two functions in their world, HR and talent acquisition, and said, right now, talent acquisition is more important to me than HR. Now, again, it depends on size and all that stuff. Because you could argue to say, hey, HR has development and they have retention and they have all these other great things. You're right, they do. And I'm not trying to say one is more important than the other. What I'm saying is they don't necessarily belong together.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, and they're two separate functions, right? It would be like going, we should have marketing and finance under the same umbrella.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
I mean, they're and like, oh, well, and it's because, well, both talent acquisition and HR are about people. Well, in most organizations, it's all about people. So you could say operations should be under HR or whatever, right?
Correct,
So
correct, correct. Yeah, so I read that and I was like, this is interesting. And you even go further. You say that obviously that talent acquisitions is sales and marketing. To me,
yeah,
I was telling my kids, my daughter is now into skateboarding decks, so she is buying the decks, painting them herself, and selling them.
yeah, yeah.
She's not marketing, right? And she wants
She's
to
an
study
artist.
marketing.
Yeah,
She's an art, and I
yeah,
said,
yeah,
so why are you studying marketing? And she looks like me, like, and I said, everything is sales and marketing. I do sales and marketing internally, externally. We're doing it all the time. But you say maybe talent acquisition should be under marketing. What do you mean?
Oh, I truly believe that if you think about what we're trying to do in talent acquisition is we're taking a position and a brand of a company and we're saying or going out to a marketplace and saying, hey, we need to sell this to somebody, right? We need to find somebody who wants this job and wants to come work at our company. At the end of the day, that is a complete sales and marketing function of what we're trying to do. We're trying to, and by the way, it's actually double sales and marketing because not only am I trying to sell the position to a candidate, I then have to take that candidate and sell that candidate to a hiring manager. So I better be really good at sales
Mm,
because I already know that one is the candidate's already going to have all these preconceived notions of our job, of our brand, of all of that. So I got to overcome that through sales and marketing. Then I'm going to go to a hiring manager who's going to have all these built-in biases who then I have to sell that person as well and say, oh, no, 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 you actually liked him. He's not from that college, or he's from, I know you hate people from this thing, or I know you always have like every hiring manager has their own kind of set of unconscious bias that we have to overcome. And so in my mind, I'm thinking this function truly needs expertise in sales and marketing. Why do we continue to have it under an HR umbrella that really it makes no sense for me? Now again, I'm also an HR guy at heart, so I don't want to give up talent acquisition because here's what I know is that they have a lot of influence in our leadership team.
yeah,
So I would love to keep that
yeah,
under my umbrella.
that's right.
But so what happens though is like you see, especially in recruiting right now, we see this, over the last 10 years, we saw this rise in recruitment marketing and all these different kinds of CRM functionality and nurturing. And so we're turning talent acquisition professionals who don't have this background into marketers.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, how about we just hire marketers and say, hey, here's the product you're selling.
Hmm.
We're selling jobs today,
Correct, correct. I have to admit, I do agree. The elements are there. It would be a revolution for HR folks to all of a sudden say, "What do you mean that they're not part of us? What do you mean, right?" Um,
Yeah, and by the way, in most organizations, the head of TA and the head of HR rarely get along, which is just another reason why don't we just don't like, hey, just
that's
go
right. Just
because
go
I know.
away.
And again, I've worked on both in a corporate setting. I've worked in both an HR executive role and a TA role. And what I would say is that they're so different The reason they don't get along is because you have one who's very compliance and risk driven,
Mm-hmm.
and one who's driven by, I just have to fill these positions. I
Yes.
have to sell,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because in my current job with Millennia Companies, Maxine Lowe is our director of talent acquisition, and that's sometimes the challenge that we encounter. Right? She is filling these jobs. She does an amazing job in selling the jobs that we have, in selling the company, and then all of a sudden she comes to us and say, "Why are you guys firing these people?" And then leads me into this what you say, the save strategy. So she talks a lot about, can we save these individuals, because
Yeah.
I have to go out there and continue to find more people. Can we somehow strike a balance? And I do see how it can conflict, because some HR folks may say, well, we can't keep these people, so you go and find more people. Well, I can find all the people in the world, but if we're not keeping them, you're making my job harder. And I think that's where the contradiction happens for both.
Gustavo, here's what we found, right, was that, so when I was at Applebee's is when the save strategy kind of started. So if I have a general manager of a really, really great restaurant, they will make the company on an annualized basis about $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a really crappy general manager of a restaurant, we might actually lose 2, 3, 4, 500,000 in that restaurant if they're really bad. That's a swing of about $1.5 million. And so what would happen would I'd get a call from an area leader, and it said, "Hey, by the way, just want to let you know, Mary is leaving, that location. She put her 2 weeks notice in." And I'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Mary's exceptional, and she's making us a ton of money. Why is she leaving?" "Well, Tim, she has a kid, and I need her to work Saturday nights, and she, her kid plays basketball on Saturday nights, and so she's going across the street to work for Chili's because Chili's is going to give her, Saturday nights off." And you're going to let $1 million walk out the door because over a Saturday night?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm going to fire you.
Yes, yes.
And so what we found was, as people put in their notices, or as we learned that they were going to leave, we decided to bring them in and actually have talks with them, because we're like, look, hey, we're paying you, so we're going to fly you to like the corporate headquarters. You're going to sit down with the executive team. And almost 40% of the time, we were able to save that person because it was over silly stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, gosh, my son's going to college and I'm getting $8,000 raise to go work for this other company. And we're like, again, $8,000 is what we're talking about. And we're going to lose a great employee.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but again, like on an area standpoint, they're like, well, hey, if I pay Mary $8,000, then I'm going to have 10 other people that need $8,000 as well, because they're going to, oh, Mary got the raise, so I need it. And I'm like, well, then we probably need to have a conversation about this, right?
Yep.
And understand bigger. So we understand it all. We get why those things happen, but it doesn't still answer the question of why you would allow them to leave.
Oh, right. Well, but I think that's a good scenario where, if we have talent acquisition thinking marketing, thinking sales, in that scenario, they're looking to close the deal. How do I close the deal? How do I get the business? Mm-hmm. HR, on the other hand, is thinking, wait, we're not being fair. We're not being consistent. What we do for one, we have to do for all. And I have to admit, I say, no. Why? Why do we have to do the same thing for everybody simply because we're so risk adverse in HR? And I get it, because we have that legal side, the litigation concerns, discrimination, but there's shades of gray. I've always said HR is about gray. It's not about black and white. You want black and white, you go to accounting.
Yeah, I the one thing that every executive would tell me when I was in HR, they were like, "Tim, you're not like any other HR person we've ever worked with. Like, why is that?" And part of it is like, look, it's not my job to mitigate your risk. It's my job to advise you of risk, and then make the business decision: are we willing to take that risk on or not? Right?
Yep.
Whereas I think most traditional HR people that I run into and talk to, they feel like it's their complete job to eliminate 100% of risk of an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, no, that's not your job. Because it's your job to advise of risk and then understand what that executive wants to get done, and then figure out, is there a way that we can actually do this? Understanding that, hey, there's a 3% chance this ends badly and we're going to have a court case. So there's a 97% chance that we can do this and it's going to work out great.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well now as a business leader, I got to make that decision.
Correct. I think the beauty for me, which I'm glad that you just articulated, most of the time, I don't have to make the decision. I just have to present you the options, the risks with each one, and you, CEO, or you, owner, or you, president, you can make the decision. Now, I will tell you what I would do, but you ultimately have that decision. And I've encountered similar HR folks that are so risk adverse that, again, they become so compliance focused that they miss the point of, that's not really what I'm paying you to do, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that has changed?
I mean, I've had a lot of people come back at me and say, well, what happens when that leader, you advise them that it's going to be 80% chance, right, that this could end in a lawsuit, and they decide to go forward anyways. And I said, well, I've never allowed a leader to put themselves in that position. I've always then at that point, I'll bring in another leader. I'll bring in the legal team. I'll do something to help them get more information. Yep. So as an organization, we can actually make the right decision. And if you have the right influence and right relationship with your leadership team, I've never had that become an issue. But I think too often we don't have a relationship, and then we use risk mitigation as a weapon and say, no, you can't do it, or and then then you understand why, like the whole Fast Company article over a decade ago was why everybody hates HR, right?
It's funny because that article comes out, and the following day, the CEO of the company that I was working at the time put it on the desk of the head of HR, and she shows it to me, and it says, "Did you see this?" And I remember reading it, and it wasn't that I didn't get it, but I had probably the typical reaction that most HR people had, which was, I'm offended by this, right? It's because you don't understand us. But then the analytical side kicks in and say, why are they saying this? Why are they writing this article? Outside of the title being bombastic just to draw attention, what is the content of it? And what do we take away as HR professionals to really adjust so that they stop hating us? Because we're walking around like the principal's office. I mean, that stigma is still out there. When I call an employee and I leave a voicemail, hey, Tim, this is Gustavo from HR. Can you please give me a call back? And now they're like, and then I hear through the grapevine, hey, you called Tim? Tim was telling me that he received your voicemail. He was scared. So now I tend to be much more specific as to what the issue is. If it's something confidential, then I say, hey, call me back. And I kind of leave it hanging, but most of the time I say, hey, I just need to talk to you about this or that. So that
I actually do the opposite. Because here's my thing, as I always want to try to create relationships cross-function. And I said, as an HR person, HR leader, you have this great power to call anybody and say, hey, I need to meet with you. And they'll never ask why, but they will always meet with you. And I said, so if you really want to build relationships, just call up somebody and say, hey, Mark, I need you to meet me for lunch at 11. And then take them to lunch and talk about whatever. And then they'll never say no, because they'll sit there and go, I've been trying to get on Mark's schedule for 2 months and I can never get on his schedule. And I'm like, just tell me you need to talk to him. They'll never ask.
And throughout the entire lunch, they're waiting. Oh my God.
They're waiting.
Oh my God, what's coming?
Drip of sweat coming down the side.
Some would be candid and just direct and say, am I getting fired? No, I just needed to talk to you.
I'm going to bring you to lunch, feed you, and then fire you.
And then fire you. Yes. All right. So let's take this conversation so far and put it in the context of coronavirus.
Yeah.
Do you think this concept of transparency, as I look at the economy, and I come from the hospitality side, which has been devastated, and we're going back and forth as to what's going to happen. Do you think this idea of transparency and the employee value proposition, are employers going to pull back because now they realize, hey, there's a lot of supply out there, so I really don't have to compete as much as I used to 90 days ago? Or are they going to double down because they have realized our brand it's above all of this?
My biggest fear is that we're not going to take the learnings from 2008 to 2010 of what we did wrong, and then we're going to do it all over again, right? So what happened during that time was, like you said, there was a couple things. One is we had so many candidates, we treated candidates like crap because it didn't matter. Like, whatever. I'm not gonna give you feedback. I'm not gonna respond to you. Doesn't matter. There's a million of you. If I don't like you, doesn't matter. There's somebody else gonna come in the door. At the same time, we kind of let our leaders treat our own employees like that as well. Like, hey, if you don't like it, there's the door.
Yes.
There's 100 people waiting outside for your job.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And so then we go through this huge expansion for 10 years where we had to take better care of candidates. We had to take better care of our employees. And what my hope is that we'll come out of this going, hey, I still have to treat candidates great. I still want, because if I want high quality, I want the best quality. Because in fact, now having the right hire is even more important when you're lean.
Yep.
When I can't hire, I can't just keep hiring everybody because I only have a lean number. So now I need to have all of those candidates come in, treat them well, find the right one, hire high quality. And I think what we saw in 2008 to 2010 was we said, oh, we're going to make them jump through hoops, right? We're going to take this assessment and do this and stand on your head for 10 minutes and blah, blah, blah. And at the end, they're like, see, I took 10,000 candidates and we have the best three. And like, you don't have the best three. You have three that survive.
That's true. That's true.
And they
Yes.
they might actually be the three worst candidates. But you think you have the best because they survived your crappy process.
Boot camp.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think, during hard times, we ask our employees to do so much more. So if you're treating your employees great and you're giving them a great experience, they're going to give you more. They're going to do that extra. They're going to be more loyal. If we treat them like, crap and we beat them down, it's just going to make your work doubly, like harder than it has to be.
Yeah, I think I share that same concern that we are going to revert back, which is why I posed the question, which I'm trying to get others also to provide feedback on that front. All right, so we talked a little bit about talent acquisition. We talked about transparency, and there's a concept that you introduce in the book about unicorns.
Yeah.
Google is a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
Describe to the audience, what do you mean by unicorns?
So unicorns are these companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, that are they're bigger than life, right?
Yeah.
They're the too big to fail companies, right? Like, I mean, I just saw today Amazon, Jeff Bezos is worth $140 billion. Bill Gates is second at 70 billion. He's double Bill Gates' wealth. It's an insane amount of money, right? And so, but then what will happen is, oh, I'm running a 200-person company and my CEO comes to me and says, we need to be just like Amazon. And you want to go, are you insane? That's a $2 trillion company with endless resources. You won't give me $10,000 for a new applicant tracking system. Like, shut your mouth,
yes.
Right? And so, but the thing is they're watching CNN and they're watching CNBC and they're like, oh gosh, like I saw that Amazon is taking the blood of candidates and finding the right DNA for their workers. We should do the same thing. You're like, are you in this shut up? Like you have no idea what you're talking about.
It's so, I have to admit, it's so refreshing to hear you because I've heard it. I've heard it over and over. I describe it by saying, I want you to be able to do what Facebook does, but I want you to do it for $2.50. Yeah, and you're like, listen.
To me, it's a lazy leader, right? Like I really do truly believe it's one thing if they come and say, hey, here's an issue we're having. I saw like Amazon or Google or somebody was doing this. How can we do something similar? Or how can we figure out to fix our problem, understanding like doing something like that? Is there a way that we can brainstorm this? Is there a way that we can come up? What is that going to look like from a financial standpoint, from a budget standpoint? And then come to a realization that, we might be able to do 1% of that. And is it worth it? It might be. Let's try it. Let's test some things, right?
Yeah.
Let's try to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more of the innovation conversation around the unicorn side about what can we do at our level that's being innovative that, I'm not going to be able to do what Amazon's doing, but I might be able to do something completely different that we can do. And let's talk about innovation. And I think that's where so many people get stuck is they're just going to go, oh, well, we're not Google and
Correct.
I
Correct.
don't have $1 billion to spend on HR.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. But what can you do that's innovative at your size
Yeah.
and your budget,
Yeah.
you know?
So taking the same concept of unicorns, I want to transition now to the candidate because I want some of those individuals out there that are looking for jobs to take away a few nuggets from this conversation. So starting with the concept of unicorns, just like there are companies that are unicorns, there's individuals that are unicorn. So, when I see that people are following and listening to Oprah or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, I go, you're following the wrong person. They're so far away from. Hey, listen, I know
reality.
Oprah. I'll tell you a story. I was working once at a job, and not my current employer, by the way. And there was a disconnect between what we were saying and what we were doing. Pretty big disconnect. And I said to my boss, the problem is, right now, we're behaving like Oprah. Oprah used to be poor. She's no longer poor.
Yeah.
And my boss says, are you saying that I'm Oprah? And I said, well, I'm saying that there's a lot of us here that are behaving like Oprah. We are completely disconnected from the reality of our employees, but we behave like we are. Just because we travel to the location and we spend an hour with them, all of a sudden we're one of them. And we're not. So when I hear people that are following these figures, I get concerned, which is why I, reach out to individuals like you. Certainly, Oprah is not going to pay attention to me, but I frankly don't think that Oprah can give me tangible, valuable, actionable items that I will get from you, because you're doing what I'm doing.
More difficult. Yeah. I mean, they're flying at like 50,000 feet, and I need them at 5 feet. Right.
That's right. And then they try to talk to you like they're at 5 feet, and they're not. So, so obviously there's a lot of information out there, and I do encourage people to follow people that are doing what they would like to do a year from now or 5 years from now. But when you are following these unicorns, you may get your head filled with things that are just not realistic, at least not for the time being. Hey, who knows? Somebody may become the next Oprah. But when it comes to talent acquisition, I want to get now into the ringer side. So you're my ringer in talent acquisitions.
Yeah.
What do I need to know as a candidate? What's the game in talent acquisition?
Yeah. Most positions are filled outside of the normal process. Most positions aren't filled by somebody applying to a job on a career site. And I will say this, as I think in the hourly side of the world, most of those positions are, here's a process. Like, apply to this job, do the assessment, do the drug test, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get the job. If you're a new grad or you're, white collar, most of those jobs are not filled by somebody applying to a job. Or if they are, understand like a simple economics. There's a job. It's a marketing representative, right? So anyone with a bachelor's degree in business or marketing or advertising is probably going to apply for this job. So you're going to have hundreds of people applying. If I'm a recruiter, what's going to happen is I'm going to see all these 100. I'm going to go through the first 25. I'm going to connect with probably 12. Half of those people are going to call me back. We'll do a screen, and then I'm going to send 3 people. So I literally took a tiny fraction, 10% of the applicants, and that's who I pulled from. And so you have to figure out, if I'm going to apply to that job at ABC company, how can I get myself to the top of that pile? It's probably not continuing to you can just hound the recruiter if you can find that recruiter. And most of the time you can find the recruiter. My thing is using your network, using your alumni, using everybody you have to connect with to find an insider who's going to champion you, right? And then so what they're going to do is they're going to take your resume, they're going to put it on the desk of that recruiter and say, hey, I found somebody that's really good. And automatically you'll be now added to that top of that pile.
Got it.
Now you still might not get the job, but at least you give yourself a chance.
You increase your chances. And ultimately that's what I think most people are looking for. It's that opportunity to be outside of the trash bin and at least on the pile on the top of the desk. Um,
Yeah, and it's the 7 degrees of separation Kevin Bacon game too, is right. Like I can always find like, and what I tell people all the time is like, don't ever underestimate the power of your alumni to like your school or to your city or to your church or to whatever it is you have. Somebody knows somebody who then knows somebody. And we love to be able to go in and say, hey, I have a referral or I found somebody. And automatically you get elevated in the mind of that recruiter, that hiring manager, because somebody they know gave you their name.
yeah, I think that that whole networking concept and looking for those insiders that can get you in, it's the way to go.
Oh, and I tell people all the time, like on LinkedIn, it's a classic example. I had I have 2 sons in college. Both are graduating, and they had a friend that was looking for a job, and he wanted to get a job at Amazon, and it was a different state. And I said, go on LinkedIn, search for Amazon, search for that city that you want to work in, and I said, and send invitations to those people in the group that you want to work, and say, I want to work for you. I'm a new grad. I need help, blah, blah, blah. He said about half the people connected with him, and a couple of them actually passed his stuff on, and that helped him get that interview. Like people want to help other
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
We just have to be able to willing to go do it.
yep, yep. So obviously, I made a career change, going not a career change, but an industry change. And you talk in the book about what I describe, right? These are my words. That companies are very self-centered, right? And they told you, you've never worked at a hospital, so how can you do, recruiting at a hospital? Why is it that companies are so self-centered, thinking that what they do is so unique and so specialized, right? We're not talking about medicine. We're not talking about, brain surgery. Why is it that they're so self-centered that only the people in my industry know what we're doing?
Well, I mean, it's some of it's self-serving, right? We want to make people believe that what we do is so difficult that nobody else could do it.
Mm,
That's why you can't get rid of me, right?
yeah,
And so there's a part of the industry thing is that it's like, oh, well, I'm in IT, and if you don't have IT, then you don't even know how to recruit. And I'm like, no, I can recruit anybody, like I could literally recruit any kind of person. I don't need to know. And so the same concept is like, and this happens a lot in healthcare. And I had that example of going from Applebee's, a restaurant industry company, to running TA at a large health system and having basically the CHRO like desperate to hire me, want to hire me, but then the CEO saying, no way, you're not going to hire the guy who recruits bartenders and cooks, to run TA for my health system. And so he's like, you have to go meet with the CEO. They won't allow me to hire you. And I literally spent an hour with the CEO, and he's like, "Okay, you're hired." Like but no one broke it down for him
got
and
it.
really kind of
Yes.
made it let them like, "Hey, here's exactly what I would do to hire a physician, to hire a nurse, to hire whatever." And they're like, "Holy crap, we're not doing any of that now."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, because you're broken,
Yes. 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 Well, you got an opportunity there that most candidates don't get, right? There's a lot of candidates that they look at a job posting and they look at it and go, I can do that job, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, unfortunately, you don't have the opportunity of necessarily meeting with the individual to let them know and persuade them. Your resume is what they're looking at. So if your resume doesn't highlight the things that are relevant to that job, you're going to continue to be on the pile, right? And particularly now with
yep.
the ATS systems automating that process of finding keywords and kind of rejecting people automatically. But I've been fascinated because I try to keep an open mind, right? I'm in affordable housing right now, property management. Anybody from hospitality can work in property management and vice versa. But if I all of a sudden I'm looking at somebody that was laid off from, I don't know, a financial company, oh no, they can't do property management. I mean, they were in financial. What do you mean they can't? Yeah, we may have to train them
Yeah,
a little bit more and spend a little bit more
yeah. Teach
time,
them a language.
right?
Yeah.
Teach them the language, but they're capable of doing it. The challenge is persuading those talent acquisition and recruiting experts out there to give you a chance. Is there something that candidates are missing outside of those connections that they're doing wrong?
I don't think it's not what they're doing wrong. It's what they're not doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, so I have a great example of Tom Izzo, basketball coach at Michigan State. I mean, Hall of Fame basketball coach, kind of, widely known. I mean, there's been multiple stories of people coming to him that said, "Hey, can I just come in and observe your practices and observe you as a coach and as a leader because I want to become a basketball coach." But I wasn't like a Division I basketball player. I'm a high school math teacher, but I love basketball. I love every and for whatever reason we were able to talk him into allowing this to happen, right? And so on their own time for free, they went and got the experience they needed. And for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm working a full-time job. I'm in an industry I don't like. I really want to go work in that industry. Do you have 8 hours a week? Can you work on a Saturday or something? Are you willing to do anything to help that one of those companies do a project, help somebody, mentor, ask to be ask to have a mentor, whatever it might be, because then I can go and now I have a story, right? And people hire the story, they don't hire the skill set, you know?
That's
And so it's like,
interesting. Yeah.
hey, I've actually volunteered 8 hours, 16 hours a week working with this financial company over here because I love the industry so much and I want to get into it. And this is why you should give me a shot. The hiring managers are looking for people that love to be, that want to do that job. And I can teach you how to do the job. But I need somebody that wants to be here. Show me that you want to be here. And so often people will go, oh, well, I can't do that. I have to pay my bills and I have to work a 40-hour-a-week job. Okay, that only leaves you about 400 other hours in the week that you can do something.
I know, I
How
know.
bad do you really want it?
Yeah, it's all about how badly you want it. Um, so if you yourself, if you were looking for a job right now, what were some of the strategies that you would use?
Well, I mean, again, I would. So here's one thing I think when it comes to network, we all like to say, oh, it's about network, it's about network. It's hard to just say, oh, then you just need to leverage your network. The thing I do is I engage with my network every single day
Hmm.
so that when I need my network will engage with me back. So often what I find is that people will go, yeah, I don't really yeah, that LinkedIn thing, I might go out there once a month or twice a month or whatever, or I don't connect with people or I don't have conversations that are outside of my normal work. And I'm like, okay, but then when you lose your job or you're looking for a job, you want to go engage your network, but you haven't ever engaged them.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
not really a network.
yeah,
They're just
yeah,
a list of people,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. So it's the
And
idea
so,
of doing it much more frequently rather than waiting for when you actually need help because it might be too late at
yes.
that moment.
Yeah. Now, again, that's easy to say now because someone's in the situation looking for a job is like, well, now what do I do? And I think, well, you just have to start with a cadence and you have to continue to do it on a regular basis. And eventually you're going to build your network there. I think one of the things is the understanding of depending on what level of job you lost and you're looking for, it's, I mean, it's natural to be out of work for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months for an executive to
Hmm.
finding that next job.
Correct.
And I think that's another thing people just don't realize. I was speaking with a friend of mine the other day. It took him 6 months to find his next position. He goes, Tim, I thought when I lost my job, I literally thought I would be working again in 2 weeks.
Mm.
And when he was like, and he had called me that first week, and I said, prepare yourself for 6 months. And he's just like, I just never even understood when you said that it could even be that way. And this wasn't in a good environment.
Yeah,
And I'm like, executive level 6-figure jobs just don't come falling out of the sky every single day.
yeah,
It just takes time,
yeah.
for that stuff to open up and then you in the right place at the right time and blah, blah, blah.
And that's what you have to work at it consistently and regularly because you just never know when it's going to happen.
Hey, I've been in between jobs and I will tell you, I've never worked harder in my life. Like I mean, I worked twice as hard finding a job than when I had a job.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of people, that's a struggle that they don't
yeah,
get.
yeah. So let's close with this. So, let's say I'm an up and coming HR professional, and or I'm someone that I'm at a crossroad. I'm in HR, and I'm debating: do I want to go the HR route, or do I go the talent acquisition route? Um, what are some of the things that they should consider? Not which one they should choose, although you can tell us which one would you choose, but what should they consider in considering those two options?
I mean, part of it is, I mean, it's true to me, it's always been two different mindsets of people that wanted to be in HR, someone that wanted to be in talent acquisition. Again, you have to understand, you know, on the HR side, like I loved when I worked in HR because I love to help people, right? So the training, the development, the employee relations, like every part of that I thought was really great. So I was very empathetic and compassionate, and I got to use in those muscles. And then when you go on the talent acquisition side, it was the hunter. It was, I can actually see, I can solve something and get it done. I have an opening, I can find people, I can fill it. And there was a great, like, also like just feel good about that I can finish project after project and get that stuff done as well. I think you have to know where do you lie with that,
Mm-hmm.
and then and understand that sometimes it's easier to get into an organization from a talent acquisition perspective, and it doesn't mean you can't move into HR. I think I talk to a lot of HR graduates in undergrad that are like, I can't find an HR, I can't find an HR job, but I'm getting offered these talent acquisition jobs, and I'm like, take the talent acquisition job, kill it, do great, and then when an HR job comes, take that stretch assignment to go over there, right? Again, I'm going to work 40, 50 hours in talent acquisition, but I'm going to find a project, or I'm going to find a way to get myself ingratiated with the HR team as well, and understand that what my skill set is. So when that job comes open, I can also work that job as well.
Got it. Well, Tim, I appreciate your time. In closing, I'm going to give you the floor. This is now talk about sales, right? This is your opportunity to sell yourself. What do you want the audience to know about you, about your book, and what you're working on?
Yeah, so I mean, I write every single day at timsackett.com. You can check that
I
out.
saw that you do write every day.
I've been doing that for like 8 years.
Wow.
And again, just a kind of a unique experience. So you can find me there. If you Google Tim Sackett, there's myself, which is like the first 100 pages. There's also a truck driver chaplain named Tim Sackett. I'm not the truck driver chaplain, but it would be super cool if I was both, right? Truck driver chaplain and Tim Sackett, talent acquisition HR professional. And so it's hard for me to hide. You can just Google and find me. You can get the book on Amazon or Target or wherever you buy your books. And that would be awesome if you did that. And also, I mean, I connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm like 15,000 connections or whatever. I love to connect with other HR and talent people. And I engage my network on a daily
Yeah,
basis. So
yeah. Well, what was it that you wrote? I was reading on your page something about if you buy the book and you spend $24.95 and something you don't like it, don't complain because you spend so much money somewhere else. Something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the style that you will find if you read Tim. Tim, I really appreciate your time very much from the heart. I'm very thankful. I enjoy very much what I've read so far of you. I'm really enjoying the book because it's really, again, simple to read, actionable nuggets that you can truly take to your employer back and say, hey, why don't we consider this? But most importantly, the no-nonsense approach. I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, take care. Appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Alrighty, bye-bye.